into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, all you Rowdies fans out there. This is James Knowles coming at you with the RBLR Rowdies podcast, part of the RBLR Sports podcast overall. And boy, do we have a game to talk about this week. I am here with our producer, Eureka, who is stepping in for Leo again. And Eureka, I ask this every week, how are you doing? It's usually based on the game. And I think I might be able to guess how you're doing, but I want to see if I'm on target. How are you feeling after Saturday night?
I'm still buzzing from just everything. It was it was a wonderful night. It was one of the best nights of recent memory for sure. But just being part of the crowd, or being able to go there and cover the game, being able to see the product that was on the field, it was just top of the class all the way around.
Yeah, I really can't add much to it because, as you said, it was one of the craziest nights, actually. That's the only other thing that I would say. It's one of the craziest games that I've seen in a while, at least since the 6-0 game. And, probably even crazier than that, actually, for the way that it went. But we're going to get into all of that and even more this night. And you will get it tomorrow morning, hopefully, so that you can be prepared for the game coming up this Saturday night against Birmingham Legion. And we want to make sure that everybody understands, where we're coming from this past game and what we're looking forward to in that one. So, yeah, let's just get into it. I want to start off first just by saying, please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. We obviously appreciate everybody liking and following us so that you can, recommend it to other people that way. And please obviously like and subscribe to our podcast as well. We are on all major podcast platforms. But yeah, so as I was saying, the Rowdies played their first playoff game this past Saturday. It was at home against FC Tulsa in front of an absolutely packed Al Lang. I think the final attendance figure was over 6,000. Do we have that exact number, Eureka?
Yeah, it was 6-2-6-2, so a 6-2 win in front of 6-2-6-2.
I don't know who set that up in the universe, but thank you for putting that out there for us. I guess, if we keep getting good crowd numbers and they rhyme like that at the end of the number, then maybe we'll see how it goes. But
we just don't know if I can. We need 7,000 people exactly to show up at the.
Yes, exactly. I'm not sure if we can expect something like that in the future, but yeah. So we have something to go over here with everything that you just said with our attendance and our goal scoring. I went to this past game and I actually ran into our producer, Eureka. He was sitting with me for a good portion. We had Jake Ricker, another RBLR sports podcaster. So it was just a great time. I went with my family and I told a couple of them who hadn't been yet this season, like, don't expect that for the rest of the playoffs. It was something that you probably won't see again, but savor it while you can.
Yeah, I mean, I got to meet a bunch of people too that I haven't seen, that we, of course, that we tweet back and forth all the time. So it was just shaking hands, and it was just joy and happiness. So but let's get into it. Like, I mean, was there anything shocking with the lineup that the Rowdies put out? I mean, it was kind of like the death squad for the Rowdies. I think the best 11 that we have seen throughout this entire year. And I was wondering, like, how did you think Tulsa was going to line up against us? And ultimately, like, did they meet your expectation?
Well, I will go ahead and vouch for, the death squad there. I think that's pretty good. I think that's a pretty good name for this team, the way that they bounced Tulsa out of the state on Saturday night. But for the Rowdies lineup, it was, nothing that anybody didn't expect. It was Evan Loro, Jordan Scarlett, Forrest Lasso, Aaron Guillen at the back. Normal to see them there. Leo Fernandez, the left wing back. Connor Antley, the right wing back. Again, normal to see them there. Lewis Hilton and Lawrence White were partnered in the midfield, and in front of them you could see any combination of Sebastian Guenzati, Jan Ekera, and Steven Dos Santos. So those are the players that we were dealing with in terms of our lineup for Tulsa. If anybody is unaware of all of these names, we will get into more of what they did and didn't do later on, so don't worry. They had Austin Warmel in net, Matthew Sheldon, Johnny Fenwick, Mu Jadama, and Bradley Bourgeois at the back. In front of them, they had Kembo Kibato and Lebo Moloto. And in front of them were Jason Johnson, Joaquin Rivas, Marlon and Rodrigo da Costa, two players that you had brought up last week as ones that we needed to keep an eye on. Now, all of those players, they were generally what Tulsa has done over the course of this season. If I am not mistaken, it was all their regular lineup. If you had similar coverage, I believe that we would be going over their names and just as familiar with them as we are with the Rowdies players now, other than maybe Johnny Fenwick because he joined later on in the season. But yeah, it didn't seem like it was anything too crazy over the course of the game. And, the substitutions that came on also seemed like they were generally the people that you would expect to see in that situation.
Yeah, Drew Felios and Ryan Davis, again, shout out to them. One of the best broadcasters in the whole USL. They singled out three guys, Marlon and DaCosta, but Ryan brought up Suarez, who started on the bench, but he mentioned him as a kind of a top player for them, and it's kind of I looking at their lineup and ultimately their substitutions, I kind of think their strategy was to hold Suarez, who is a former Offensive Player of the Year, and Bird, who I had brought up. I was surprised not to see him start, but I kind of think they were basically saying they're going to go all out in the second half and basically have a rotation of basically have Marlon and DaCosta for the first half and then bring on Suarez and then basically whoever is doing better and keep them on for the second.
That did actually pay off for them a little bit. We're going to get into the goals later on, but yeah, they definitely did see a couple benefits and then maybe one big downfall from those substitutions that they made. All things that we need to talk about as we move forward. But before we do that, we don't want to get into the second half just yet because there was definitely a lot to go over from the first half.
Yeah.
For the first thing that I want to mention, the crowd was absolutely the loudest I've heard in ages throughout the first half. It was even maybe a little more, it was a little louder than in the second half because, I think that we were a little more subdued, but then it picked back up as we're going to get into. I was just blown away by the supporters section and how packed they were and how loud they were that whole first half. Did you, what did you think of that compared to any other game that you've heard or been to this season?
I did get a chance to cover the first game back from having people stay away from the stadium and everything. The first there was maybe 3,500 people, 4,000, and it was really loud. It felt at the time I felt like it sounded like a packed Al Lang. I was sadly mistaken in a good way because this was an amazing crowd. The Thundersticks were a great idea by the Rowdies.
Yes.
There were tons of youth in the stands. Green and gold everywhere. It wasn't like people wearing their youth jerseys or other jerseys. It was green and gold the whole way through. So a round of applause to the 6,262 in attendance. But no bigger shout out than to the mob and the Skyway Casuals. They were on point for this game. We had tifo, we had smoke, we had flags, we had chants. We keep saying this, it was a first division experience. It was everything you could have hoped and dreamed. And I think that Neill brings this up all the time. And sometimes it might feel just kind of like canned team responses. Oh yeah, we feed off the crowd. I do not doubt that in USL Championship, while there are a lot of good crowds, of course, throughout the country, Al Lang has to be number one, if not. Of course, I'm biased saying that, but I truly feel that this is a top experience in the USL Championship, and there's probably some first division that don't hold a candle to what we experienced. So that's my long-winded way of saying that it was amazing and it was electric.
No, I was actually going to say something that you just took the words right out of my mouth, and that there are first division teams that do not have the kind of intense crowd that we experience, on a weekly basis, and especially this past Saturday.
Yeah,
it was something that, I was in the stands as, just a person who was sitting most of the game. A couple times I was standing up, but I certainly wasn't running for even 45 minutes, let alone 90. And I was feeding off that. If you're out there and your adrenaline is pumping and, you're trying to sprint at your top speed to get to a ball, and that crowd is right there screaming behind you or even in your face at times, yes, it is definitely going to have an impact on you. I was just, like I said, blown away. It was incredible, and I think that anybody who has not been out there, you got to get out there because you're missing out, and especially during the playoffs, there are not that many seats available, but I think that there probably would be some for somebody to get out there and try and get into the stadium. I think that you should definitely try to experience it before the season ends, one way or another. So now that we have all of that out of the way, let's actually get into the way that the game went down, because that is just as important, if not more so. The Rowdies in the first half seemed absolutely hellbent when they were out of possession. It wasn't too much in the first half. I thought that the Rowdies were very good about maintaining possession, and then it kind of, it's hard to maintain that over the course of a whole game. But definitely for the first half, it seemed to me like they were keeping the ball for long stretches, and then when they lost it, they were swarming, and they were absolutely relentless on Tulsa and never really gave them a chance to breathe. They wanted to make sure that any ball that they could get to, they won. Any ball that they had no right to get to, they were still going to put pressure on, and they were still going to make sure that they had every chance to make something out of it, I guess.
I mean, you have to think that even Tulsa couldn't have expected them to just be on their game. I mean, it was, I think that we were going to see Tulsa maybe sit back in a 4-4-2, but they came out pressing. They weren't sitting back, and I think they were trying to rely on what they do best. They have a defensive weakness, so they were pressing and trying to move forward, but even though some teams have had luck early in the matches pressing against us, the Rowdies from the first whistle were ready to play, and they were swarming the ball, like you said. I mean, it was just, I mean, it was everything I could have asked for, especially in that first 15, which I'm sure we'll get into the details, but just in the first 15. The Rowdies were controlling the match. The Tulsa had really no chances, and really it was only on the counterattack and kind of toothless chances from the wings, crossing over, trying to get something in. But at least for the first 15, there was nothing Tulsa could do.
Yeah, and I don't know if that motivation comes down to, whatever they did for the pregame or whatever the impact specifically of the fans were on the players themselves. I would imagine that it's probably a combination of both. But if they can find that perfect ratio again, it was something that they need to bottle, and they need to just keep reopening it before every game, because everybody out there in green and gold was motivated 100%. And the way that they played it, as I said, it really didn't allow Tulsa to have any room on the ball, and it made sure that they were trying to cause turnovers in good areas, just like the Rowdies would always do. But the other thing that I really noted from the first half is that the way that the Rowdies lined up their midfield players. So when Steven Dos Santos would be sitting up top, he would have Sebastian Guenzotti to his left, and he would have Jan Ekra to his right. And then behind them, Lewis Hilton and Lawrence White would be contributing in the midfield, obviously, so that they could try to get the ball moving up the field in little combinations there. And in doing that, because Jan Ekra would step forward and Lawrence White would step forward, that would pull in the outside fullbacks for Tulsa. So their left back and their right back had to stay very central. And ultimately what that led to is a lot of chances for Leo Fernandez and Connor Antley down each of their wings. I think Connor Antley was the player that I was closest to in terms of where I was sitting, so I could see more of him than Leo. And it was, it just seemed to me that Connor Antley was getting a cross off once every 5 minutes, if not more frequently than that. And Leo Fernandez certainly had a lot of those as well. I love to see that, the Rowdies do have their game plan, and against certain teams, it's going to work better than others. But certainly with Tulsa and the way that they lined up, they were unable to cope with this. And frankly, I would say my one problem with the first half was that there were several chances. Only went into halftime 1-0 up. Yeah. But, it did obviously open up in the second half. The floodgates were blown away. But I would have to say, in the future, if we're going to get that many chances, it's unlikely that a second half will continue to happen like it did against Tulsa. So we need to be maybe a little bit more clinical with all of those crosses coming in at some point. But was very good, obviously, that we were creating chances, as all of the statisticians will say. If you have a high X goals, which is expected goals, then at some point that will turn into goals, and it did later on in this game. But to highlight Leo Fernandez and Connor Antley, I think that that's very important. Another player that I was extremely impressed by was Steven Dos Santos. Duba was working so hard during this game. There was one point, and I had to make a note of it. There was a ball that he had absolutely no right to expect to chase down. It was behind all of their defenders who were possibly up near the halfway line, and it was just going and going and going. It definitely looked like it was going to go for a goal kick. Even their keeper just let it run, and Steven Dos Santos sprints like a bat out of hell to run this ball down in the 33rd minute, and he ultimately earned a corner off of it because he got there and stopped it right before it went out. The defender realized that he had just got there, and so he starts sprinting at it. Steven Dos Santos has to stop himself, like running off the field because he was running so fast, has to stop himself, turn around, and then he gets to it just in time, put his foot out and poke it, and when he pokes it, it bounces off of the defender's leg who was just running in late, and gave us that corner kick that I mentioned. So, yeah, those are a couple of players that I really wanted to highlight from this first half, as well as Lewis Hilton, who was doing what he always does. And, he was creating all of the passes to either wing for Leo and Connor out there. So, yeah, those were the players that I really thought did well. But none of that highlights the goal necessarily, because in the 21st minute, it was one of those where, the ball did come out wide to Connor Antley. He had a couple of these crosses come in already. He tries to dribble, and then when the player is committed, he just cuts back out to the right. And I don't think that Connor Antley was originally signed to be this playmaker on the wing, but man, has he turned into a great one. When he ultimately does get the cross off, Sebastian Guanzotti slides in, and I wasn't even sure if it was going to be a goal for a certain point. He had a couple of chances that he missed. One that was cleared right off the line, essentially. But this one, he was able to, bundle over the line with a sliding challenge before the defender got there. Yeah. And obviously the crowd went wild after that.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I mean, Antley crosses into traffic. I mean, but Jan Ekra is on the run, and the keeper marks Jan Ekra, I think, the mainly. And then the ball goes past both of them, Seba, and then, I mean, even Dos Santos was kind of trailing just after that, even if Seba wasn't able to get it, Duba would have put it in. But Seba just dives feet first, gets his 22nd on the year, and really that was kind of like the icing on the cake of a really good run in that first 20. So you talked about Hilton, you talked about getting these chances by Fernandez and Antley. Well, just this was, we had seen a couple chances in the 7th and 10th minute that, like, Ekra doing a lot of work in that midfield, getting the ball free, dispossessing, getting it to Hilton, but inside the box, I mean, they were just, it didn't matter where it was coming from. We had chances in the box, whether it was Seba doing his best Dos Santos impression but getting overpowered. But even on that chance, it was about the 7th or 8th minute, Seba gets kind of overpowered, but the ball gets recovered, and then Connor Antley immediately crosses it low, and it should. I mean, that was a chance that probably had a lot of potential. So we were, yes, I think we all had neat pins and needles, and it did take 20 minutes to get a goal, but we were sitting there going like, nope, there's no doubt about it. They are on their game, and so to finally have that break the seal, it was just I mean, it went crazy. We had the smell of sulfur in the air immediately with all the smoke. The mob they were already crazed, but now it was like, we now have the lead that we should have, that we've earned through the first 20. It was I mean, it was beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to put it, actually, is the lead that we were owed for all the play that we had leading up to that. And it just gets. I think that the last 15 minutes of the first half, I think that it was more of the same in terms of what the Rowdies were doing, but they definitely upped the ante. I have a note in here specifically that says they were really picking up the ante the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There was more great work from Steven Dos Santos. There was a corner that fell to Lewis Hilton, where I believe he put it just above the upper 90.
Yeah.
Between the crossbar and the post there,
Yeah.
and it was so close. I think that the crowd was ready for it, but unfortunately that one goes a little high. And then Lawrence Wyke, between some give and goes through him and Ekra and Hilton and Steven Dos Santos involved in that one again with some really good work, but it ultimately fell to Wyke, who was able to turn his defender, and he shot it high above the goal. These were all chances that we were expecting. One more. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately they did not turn out, but it was just amazing to see that the Rowdies were playing so well and getting all of these chances. And I would say that was despite all the efforts from a certain referee out there.
Yeah.
It was among, I don't know, it was among one of the worst, or let's say weirdest, performances from a referee that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I know well, we asked Neill. I mean, we kind of were direct about asking Neill after the game, but he didn't want to say anything to get in trouble, and rightfully so. Like, why do that? But
of course,
it was horrendous in my opinion, in my personal opinion. I mean, Dos Santos got mugged the whole game. There were multiple There were multiple handballs. There were probably some simulation diving going on. There were some touch fouls. Now, I don't want to say it was one-sided, because there were a few fouls that were called in our favor, but they were still bad calls. So I don't want to sit here and say they only called bad calls, but there were bad calls all the way around, and especially there was a really good chance that the ball. I mean, we were sitting next to each other at the time, and I was like right on the line, and I could see the ball went out of bounds. Completely went out of bounds. The guy brought it back in, and then they continued play. They called a foul, and that opened up a great chance. And it's just like, not only should there not have been a foul that may have even been a yellow, I can't remember at the time, but it was this horrible turn of events that should have just been a dispossession, and we should have had a throw in at the point. But I guess maybe to steer it away from the refereeing again is like, you had brought up that Hilton rocket that was just 10 inches too high from the bar, and that was only 3 or 4 minutes after the goal. I mean, the Rowdies smelled blood after opening up scoring. I mean, after opening up that first goal with the few chances they had before that, I mean, it was just, if it sounds like the Rowdies had the possession for most of the half, I don't know, I don't have the half statistics, but it had to have been 70-30, if not more. It was just, it felt like it felt like we were just, every time they had the ball in the midfield, we'd take it from them, and every time they before anything ever got started, we were already on the attack. There was beautiful service of crosses and hitting the crossbar, going over the bar, like all the sliding, just not getting it. That's what it felt like. And I think Neill confirmed that. I mean, I think he had said that we should have had a couple more goals going into the half. But really, that's how I felt when it came into the half, that it was just, Tulsa had a few opportunities, but nothing scary. And but I say, maybe I'll bring this up to you, James. How did you feel the emotion on the field going? There was, I think, real emotion where there was some pushing, there was some yelling. Aaron Guillen got a yellow right before halftime. There were a couple plays where even Neill, they were cutting to him, and Dos Santos had just had a wonderful chance in the box where he was lockstep with the defender. The defender drops like a rock. They called it a touch foul. Duba reaches the ball first, puts it in the net. We're all going crazy. We think it's a goal. And not only just a goal, but like they might even give a yellow to this guy for simulation. And nope, it's a push-off foul. Dos Santos is absolutely incredulous. The players are getting mad. They cut to Neill on ESPN who is literally clenching his jaw together. Like you could see the muscles in his jaw like pulsating because he is just like, I mean, I don't even want to know what his true feelings inside of his brain were, but they were probably similar to what you were saying about this bad officiating. So I guess let me move that to you that way. How did you feel the intensity or the feeling was on the pitch as the half ended?
I think with the players having dealt with a couple of bad calls, especially certain players, Aaron Guillen's was one where, I could understand that would actually be a yellow. I think that one wasn't the worst call of all the calls that we saw, but there must have been players out there, and you definitely saw this boil over in the second half a little bit more. We'll get to that, but definitely Steven Dos Santos for one, and, a couple of the other defenders who had been on the wrong side of these ridiculous calls where, it's not a foul, but they play it off like it was, like that one where the whole ball goes out, but ultimately they give it to Birmingham. I don't remember exactly who was involved in that play, but they were definitely feeling, I think that they were feeling a little antsy about it. Certainly when we went into halftime, I had mentioned to you, maybe it would be good to think about taking Aaron Guillen off, moving Connor Antley into the back line, and then putting Sebastian Dalgard at the right wing back spot. Now, that's not ultimately what happened. Neil Collins had his own plans, and they pretty much worked out to a T. But we were definitely worried, and I think the players were also pretty worried about whether or not the game was going to go to, it was going to start to get out of their hands, and especially if these calls where, a player from not from Birmingham, but from Tulsa, obviously does, something that is against whatever rule it is, whether, like you said, it's a handball, or they have clearly taken a dive, or they have tripped our own player, and then, we come away with the ball, and instead of playing advantage or calling it back because of the thing that Tulsa did, it is somehow a call against the Rowdies. That happened, I think, 4 times over the course of the game where I stood up and, it's one thing to yell from the stands where the referee can't hear you, but I couldn't help myself. Like, what is going on? These are crazy calls that you were literally giving the wrong way, not even just not giving or something like that. It was definitely nuts, and I think that they were all feeling it out there. But they were able to calm themselves down, at least in terms of maintaining their cool and not letting the referee, not giving the chance for another yellow card to be given to the Rowdies players. And that only worked out because Tulsa ultimately got their red card later on in the second half. So, I think that they played it very well. And I think that Neil Collins, whatever he said at halftime, was enough to keep their heads in the game to the point that, the referee became less of a factor for the score line. He definitely tried to impact it one way or another, but he did not give us anything to worry about when the final whistle blew. So that was good.
Helped. It helped really that as we get into the second half here, it also helped because at the time it's 1-0. You're right. I mean, so not only are these are big decisions that could ultimately cost us the tie, get into a tie and
that's exactly
worse,
right.
So that's why I think that intensity was so high, because both teams were still in the game, even though, you got to think, if you're Tulsa, you have all these opportunities from the Rowdies, but they only put one in the net. So like, we're still in this thing. We can still do this thing, right? Well, it didn't take long in the second half to double up on the score. So, coming right back, there were still people in line for concessions when the goal was scored in the 46th minute. How did you feel immediately with them getting it? Ultimately, it's an own goal, but Ekra with dispossession right at the top of the box. Stop me if you keep hearing Jan Ekker's name here. Dos Santos attacking, crosses it, it gets deflected into the net, and now we are lighting another smoke bomb and cheering at a 2-0 own goal there.
Yeah, the second half started out like a house on fire. It was crazy. What the thing that you mentioned, Jan Ecker, again, this is why I have been a big advocate for Jan Ecker since he has taken over this role, is that Jan Ecker is very good when the other team is in possession. He is extremely good at putting defenders off of their game when they are supposed to be controlling the ball and trying to start an attacking move. whether that's either played through a long ball, so up to their own attacking line, or just literally a ball from the central defender, whichever one it is, into the midfield so that they can move the ball forward. Jan Ecker is extremely good at putting that defender off or sometimes intercepting it. It's actually something we saw a couple of times where Sebastian Guenzati, I think in the first 10 minutes of the game or whatever it was, he put his foot out when the goalkeeper was trying to clear the ball, and he got in the way of it, and it went just wide. It was actually very close for just a deflection off of a big kick. So this is something that we saw all game, and Jan Ecker was one of the beneficiaries here. As you said, when it ultimately broke away from him, Steven Dos Santos is the one who works again so hard to get the ball. There are just constant themes throughout this game. And when he does go to hit the cross off, then I believe it was Kembo Kibato, one of their central midfielders, who was unfortunate enough in, their own sense, obviously good for us, that it takes the deflection and it goes up, a big looping deflection over the goalkeeper, and it goes in. The Rowdies are running away screaming, and all of the fans are jumping up and down. And that's the way that we get it going. But, that wasn't the only goal very early on in the half. We keep going, and it's the 67th minute, I think, is the third one where a ball break. No, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead here. It's the 56th minute.
Yep.
67th minute was actually when Tulsa tried to get back into the game. But to go back to our third goal, ridiculous non-call from the referee again. And, ultimately this one works in our favor. I think that we couldn't say that many times, but when he let it go, the ball fell to Connor Antley. Connor Antley was able to step in to intercept a pass that had just, broken off of the play where the referee let it go. And then that led to a corner, and off of the corner, we got our third goal. And, that was just very good to see. I think that is also part of what happened here, what we were just talking about with the intensity from the players and the attitude that they have towards what's going on. You get a second goal immediately after the halftime whistle and the break. I think that that's something where you calm your nerves a little bit. This one, literally, you don't think of all of this exactly as it happens in the play, but it's probably in the back of your head, I might imagine. After the referee doesn't call something and then we get the corner that leads to a goal, maybe the players are thinking like, well, hey, he can try all he wants, but we're still scoring and you can't stop us. Yeah. That would at least be something that's going through my head.
One, who better than Lewis Hilton serving in the corner, and then Duba just again using his height and his skill, and just has a no doubt header. I mean, just wonderful service from Hilton, and Duba puts it away. I mean, it's just well, and that came right off the heels of the substitutions of bringing in Bird and Suarez. So it's just like, at this point, we start getting into the second half where basically it didn't matter, and it didn't really matter like who you brought in or what you did or change your formation. Like it
exactly,
it didn't matter. Like it was, and now you're down 3-0 with 34 minutes to go in the game. It's but they did turn around a little bit. Tulsa even before they scored their goal, they had a scary shot from about 20 yards out by Bird. It was deflected off of the Lumberjack lasso, and just
that's right.
It beats. I think it beats Evan Loro, but the ball hits the literal bottom of the post, and it was very scary. And coming right off, we're still clapping and cheering off of the Duba header, and here it is, man. And I think that was where they didn't give up, but the talent gap was just too much. But they didn't give up, and at this point in the game, I know I turned to you, I think, and said, like, we're up 3-0 right now, and I'm kind of like, and they just had a scary shot. I'm sitting here going, like, at this point, we're feeling pretty comfortable. I'm hoping there's just no injuries at this point.
Yes.
And then only for them to talk. I'm sure you're going to set this up, but that goal from at the 66th minute was just amazing. Even though we kind of had it in the bag, it was still a really good goal by Tulsa. So what were your thoughts on the Rivas goal?
Well, I think ultimately, for my reading of the game, what I would say is, this is playoff soccer. It's one game and you're done.
Yeah.
So you either win or you go home. And there were a lot of teams that we didn't expect who ended up going home. So Tulsa is looking at this situation and they're like, okay, we're down 3-0. It's time to start throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And literally, if you think about throwing things at the wall, that's the exact equivalent of what Tulsa did here, because they are starting to shoot from long range. And the one that you had mentioned, which I had actually skipped over, was Eric Bird's, where Forrest Lasso does knock that onto the post, and it was a very lucky deflection because it easily could have gone 1 inch to the left.
Yeah.
And then that would be inside the goal. But in the 67th, it does break for Joaquin Rivas. He was a player, I believe, that I highlighted in the previous episode, where he was somebody we needed to look out for, someone with international pedigree, and he will actually be going back to represent El Salvador in the next round of World Cup qualifiers this weekend. But he was able to get a good shot off from outside the box here, and it was just it's one of those things where Evan Loro is 6'3". He's a big guy. He's got long arms. Obviously, it's going to be pretty hard to put it in a place where he can't reach it. But Joaquin Rivas did exactly that. It was, another long shot from range, and he kept it very low, and he put it right in the corner. Again, just out of Evan Loro's reach. I think that, this is kind of a desperation moment where they're starting to take these shots from long range, but it actually turned out that several of them had the quality, and not only that, but the focus in the moment to keep their shots very straight and very straight and very strong too. Very, very good hard shots to save. And the fact that one of them was good, but the other one, it was unfortunately not defended well enough such that the shot could not be blocked, and then it went in. And after that, the game did kind of settle down a little bit, not settling in terms of the intensity. I think that it was definitely still a very intense game after that, and there was a lot of back and forth, and there was obviously a lot of arguing with the referee doing whatever he thought he was doing out there. But Eric Bird, the player that you had mentioned for the shot, and the player that you had mentioned in our preview last week, he goes and gets himself a red card by 2 ridiculous tackles. I thought that the first tackle, it wasn't a yellow card offense, but I think that definitely, a red card offense, but it was absolutely a yellow card. And, it was getting close to the border there because it was just so crunching. Yeah. And then his second one, it was absolutely late. He slides through, his feet were up. I'm honestly just happy that Steven Dos Santos, the player who on the receiving end, I'm happy that he wasn't injured by it the way that he slid in there like that.
Yeah. I mean, Bird just melted down in this game, and he was the guy that they needed to step up if they were going to have an A-game performance against the Rowdies to even have a chance. And when not only is he not on the field in the first half, that was a very tightly contested, but when he came on in the second, he was not an asset to Tulsa. So, and again, you're thinking, you're hoping for no injuries, but Scarlett's getting kicked in the head by Bird. Dos Santos is you had mentioned live that like he's in a rugby match. We have Lawrence Wyke limping around, and then Lewis Hilton got taken out, for a second there, and it's just like, we're watching all these guys that we kind of need all of these because we're already up 3-1 or whatever, and it's like, okay, guys, there's only 20 minutes left in this game, and
we're take still, it easy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know they don't want to go home, but like, this is kind of where that depth needed to kind of kick in for Neil Collins. I think. I know I was just feeling like, I mean, Duba was still in the game at the 81st minute.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm just sitting here, enough to get a yellow card in the 80th minute, but like, as much as he could have put another one on the board with a really good chance, it's just like, as we sit here, I mean, I know you probably want to go through the crazy. Like, there's like a crazy 10-minute stretch that I'm sure you'll get into once we finally do get all these substitutes in. And now I'm kind of thinking, like, what if it was just a little bit sooner, Thankfully, we haven't heard of any knocks on the guys, but it was really intense and was kind of scary because you have a big lead and now you're just sitting here going, "Come on, guys, survive the rest of this match so we can move on to Birmingham." So, but
it was definitely something that was going through my head.
Yeah, what was going through your head in the final 10-15 minutes of this match?
Well, so yeah, we're getting into that. Like you said, the final minutes. I mean, we didn't have another goal until the 89th minute. So leading up to that, it is, the 70th minute, the 80th minute, and moving on. And I'm thinking like, okay, we got to make sure that nobody, just like you said, nobody gets injured here. This is getting to be a very rough game. Let's have nothing go wrong. Let's have nothing impact us for the next game or the next game.
Yeah.
And I don't want, the Rowdies to lose their heads either and start getting cards that they will be suspended for games afterwards. There are just so many factors. And I'm glad that Neill Collins obviously made all those substitutions that he did for all of these reasons. But I thought that, usually when there is a high intensity game and you make several substitutions, it will slow it down. And I think it did at the very first moment that the substitutions were made. A lot of the players who had some hot blood from the prior minutes, they were off and they were able to go and sit on the bench and have their cool down. But the players who come on, they're going to approach this game differently and they're not going to be in quite the same headspace. Turns out they actually are in a different headspace that requires a lot of goals. So we get up into the 89th minute, and I've texted all of my friends about this since then. We're going up into the 89th minute, and the game is 3-1. Game ended up 6-2, obviously, as everyone has heard at this point. So we have 4 more goals to get through. It's one of the most bonkers endings to a game I've ever seen. Leo Fernandez was the one who got the goal in the 89th minute that made it 4-1. And as everyone who is on Twitter has noticed, there's the 4-1 to the blank lads meme, and I won't add that part to our podcast so we can stay not X-rated.
We almost had it, James.
We almost had it, and I've got a detail that I want to get to as we hit all these goals. So the 89th minute, Leo gets his goal, and I don't even have a note for that one because as I'm going to try and write a note, Tulsa scores an amazing goal right afterwards. Leo got his goal, and I it was a very nice goal, but I have to absolutely speak up for Tulsa's goal here. Their goal in the 90th minute by Dario Suarez, a player that you have mentioned a couple of times now. It was absolutely beautiful. It was another goal from outside the box. This one was a looping shot. It wasn't one that was, straight and strong more so than it was very well placed so that it was out of Evan Loro's reach again, but up high as opposed to down low on the ground. And it goes, like I said, just up over in a loop and into the top corner. It was that was an absolutely upper 90 finish. It was beautiful to see. If it, had been one of our guys, I might have liked it a little more, but fair play to him. Doesn't matter anyway, because as we're going through, I'm trying to take notes for Leo's goal, and I can't because that goal is scored. I'm trying to take notes for that goal. And then a couple minutes later, 90th plus 2 minutes, then we have scored again. And then in the 90th plus 5, we have scored again. So that's how the game ended. Lucky M. Kosana got the 90th plus 2, and then Leo Fernandez got the final goal in the 90th plus 5. You were sitting next to me, and you had a couple of graphics set up for the final score. If you don't mind my telling everybody a little inside baseball here.
No, go ahead.
And you are like, okay, so I've got graphics for all of these different score lines. If they keep going, I'm going to not have the graphic necessary. So I think it was above 4-1, you said, or 4-2. After that, it was 5-2, and you're like, well, I'm going to have to make a new graphic. And then they go ahead and they score another one.
I was ready for a 5. I was ready for a 4-2 win. Like I had every score line ready to go because I didn't have my laptop with me or anything, but I did a little pre-planning, okay? And I had, so I had to actually call back to the home base and say, hey, fire up Photoshop. I need you to change some things for me. But we got it out there. We got the tweet out there so that everyone that wasn't at the game could see the score, and everyone that was at the game could retweet and have a party on Twitter. So, but man, I got to go back to this Suarez goal. I mean, Evan Loro is a pretty big guy, okay, but this ball found a soccer ball sized gap to get inside.
Yes, that's exactly
waved,
what happened.
I mean, it waved like a knuckleball, and just that millisecond of hesitation allowed that window, because Evan Loro he won the Golden Gloves, like he's the man, okay, he's the dude, and this was it was a phenomenal shot, and I have to give credit where credit is due. This was phenomenal, and it was I obviously it wasn't a deciding factor, so that's if it were the breaking a tie or forcing penalties or something like that, we'd be a lot more mad about it. But even then, there's nothing we could have done about that. That was just a plus Sports Center top 10 performance. I mean, it was phenomenal. So, but then our boy Lucky comes in, and when he come in the 88th minute, they scored a goal in the 89th, and Lucky, it's almost like he came in from the substitution and got the ball, and then comes in with space, gets it over to Fernandez, who's wide open, and yeah. I mean, it's just phenomenal. We'll probably get into Lucky in a little bit here with our questions, but
yes, exactly.
I mean, I guess, like I said, we got. I had to call home to get a graphic changed real quick, but I just sent out a graphic. So if you're listening to this and you follow us already, you already know who our man of the match is. But for all those that haven't seen it yet, James, who was your man of the match for this Tulsa?
Well, for me, it really came down to two players who had the biggest individual impact, I should say, because obviously it is a team sport, naturally, and the goals are the ones that, the goals are what we measure. So how do we impact all of those goals themselves? How do we measure the impact of all of those goals themselves? Is the scoreline, but how do we get to that? What causes everything? And Leo Fernandez and Connor Antley were both creating chance after chance after chance all game long, 90 minutes for both of them. Oh, I'm sorry. I believe that Connor Antley did go off, and then no. I'm sorry. I'm saying the wrong thing anyway. Sebastian Dalgard went to left wing back, but Leo Fernandez moved up. That's what happened. So disregard what I just said, and we'll start over again. Leo Fernandez and Connor Antley are creating chances the whole 90 minutes, and I got to give it to one or the other of them. And then you look at their impact, and you see that Leo Fernandez scored the 2 goals for me. I think that I got to give it to him for that. I believe Connor Antley had at least 1 assist, possibly more. He was definitely involved on more than just 1 goal, but I do have to give it to Leo Fernandez for having done all of that and created the 2 actual goals that were counted on the scoreline themselves. So that is the pick for me. I want to keep it pretty simple. I think that that's easy enough. What about you, Eureka? What was your man of the match choice?
I've said this last week too. Goals are shiny and wonderful, and I think that everything you said is correct, and Fernandez deserves this award. But I kind of was going between a couple guys that they didn't they didn't get goals, but they definitely impacted the scoreline. The first one was Jan Ekra. I was almost going to give it to him just because of so many dispossessions, so many times that Tulsa just could not. They might even had something going halfway down, and then they get into the Rowdies' third, and it doesn't even get to the back 3 because Jan Ekra is already taking it in the midfield. But I did have a lot of the same thoughts as you did about Connor Antley, and for me, Antley just had amazing crosses, accurate passes all night, and he assisted that the first goal to save us. So for me, it was Connor Antley. For all those, the little things matter. I really believe that no matter what sport it is, and for me, Jan Ekra for sure, but Connor Antley maybe a little bit more impacted this game with all the little things, and that's why he's my man of the match.
Well, that's not too bad, right? A wing back for each of us. I think that is a pretty good indication of the way that the Rowdies played and the success that they were able to have doing that. So that should do it for our questions and analysis. But I believe, Eureka, you said that we do have some Twitter questions we need to go over here.
We do. Let's get into Lucky Mkasana here. David Morales, Davey from Tampa, who I got to shake his hand. That was awesome. He says Lucky was so productive in the final minutes of the match. So, James, was it a case of Tulsa being exhausted and him exploiting that? Or was there something that he did to create the goals immediately after he subbed on?
Okay, so I like this question because this is another one of those things where we want to find out what the cause of
Mm,
of whatever phenomenon it is, what the actual cause is. So
yeah.
here I would like to point to two different things, and it's probably one of those that it's a case of one and the other. And I want to bring up Neil Collins and his post game press conference to lead me into that. So somebody asked him specifically about Lucky and what he thought about Lucky's performance, and he had mentioned, if anybody's on Twitter following the Rowdies, they will have quoted him here. He said that we put Lucky in freezer storage before leading up to the playoffs because he is, one of the best in the business at being the super sub.
Mm.
It is a stereotypical role in soccer where somebody who might not have the legs to play a whole 90 minutes because as good as Lucky is, and he's obviously good to have done everything that he did in this game, but he's getting older in this game, and it's harder to continue to play at the speed that the Rowdies especially like to play at for a whole 90 minutes. So when you come on and you play that super sub role, the whole thing is to come on specifically when a team is tired and try and have as much impact as possible. Now, the thing is, yes, Tulsa was definitely exhausted, and I think that they had been, again, throwing everything at the wall. Essentially, at that point, nothing was working because it was 3-1, and they weren't able to get too many more chances that turned into big things until after Lucky had come on, and they made it 4-1 and then 4-2 when Tulsa came back and scored that. But yeah, they have been exhausted. They're looking at the end of their season. They're kind of frustrated anyway. It's all of these factors kind of coming together at the same time, where Lucky Nkosana is able to take advantage of a dejected, exhausted team. And he is the player that he is, who is very good at doing this role to begin with. He knows how to come on and take advantage of that situation. He's done it all this season. He did it last season in the playoffs. I remember that he scored, I think, the winner in 2 games against Charleston and then Louisville, if I'm not mistaken, or possibly the game before Charleston and then the game against Charleston. But I would have to go back and check my math on that one if I want to be dead certain. So this is definitely a case of him having the expertise to come on and play the role, and then continuing to take advantage of the situation such as it is, which is Tulsa having already essentially played themselves off the field.
Yeah, and the other question we got, I agree with everything you just said. I mean, it was awesome, and having a super sub is just another piece that this Rowdies team has that keeps them elite in this league. So, let's talk about the rest of the league as Brett Iron Brew season at St. Pete Flux. He kind of had a repeat, he kind of brought it up because so much craziness happened over this weekend. The Rowdies beating Tulsa, while no one expected a 6-2 result. I think most people expected this result in a win. But there were some results that ultimately were unexpected. And he asked, basically after all the craziness, the same question he asked of us last week: who is your favorite now to win the West? I mean, you look at Oakland Roots beat El Paso. They were, and Phoenix got beat as well. It's just like, what are we doing? And there's going to be some crazy matchups next week as Rio Grande Valley, RGV, takes out Phoenix, and they will face San Antonio. And then the other matchup is you've got Orange County. That's the other team that advanced here. Orange County SC against Oakland Roots. So who's your new adjusted? I know both of us had talked about El Paso and Phoenix, especially because we wanted that unfinished business. Well, it's going to stay unfinished because they couldn't get out of the first round. So who do you got in the West now, James?
Yeah, that obviously throws a big monkey wrench into a lot of people's brackets. And if I had made one, I would already be done.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, but so if we do look at it really quickly, Phoenix and El Paso were the number one seeds for the for the Pacific Division and the Mountain Division, respectively. Yep. And now both of them have lost to what would have been the fourth place seeds in the opposite division. So, Oakland have beat El Paso, and they will play the other remaining team from California, Orange County, and RGV Toros from the Rio Grande Valley. They beat Phoenix, and so they will face the only other team remaining from Texas in San Antonio. Now, if you look at it again, I think that the best thing to do is look at the course of the season, of course, see who ended up best in the standings, because that will show you who is a better team overall. Usually, if it gets down to the individual game, yes, you can see these crazy upsets that both of them experienced, and nobody probably predicted in the world. If you made that bet, I'll tell you what, I need to get your phone number and start asking you what else is going to happen, because I gotta call some bookie somewhere.
Yeah.
But RGV are going to play San Antonio, and that means that the fourth place team is going to play a second place team.
Yeah.
And I believe both of those were in the Mountain Division as well. Then you look at the other side, and these are two Pacific Division teams. Oakland, the fourth place team, are going to play Orange County, the second place team, again. So if we just look at it that way, then, naturally people are going to say that Orange County and San Antonio are the two best seeds in remaining, and they have the highest likelihood. Obviously, they do have the highest likelihood to go through, and I would tend to agree with that. If I'm being bold here, what I'm going to say is that Oakland Roots are on a very good upswing right now in terms of their form, and I think that they have a very good chance to knock off Orange County. It was something that you brought up earlier in this episode, that Oakland Roots. I'm mixing everybody up here. But Oakland Roots had a very, very poor start to the season, and the fact that they're even in the playoffs at this point, it's kind of amazing. It's something of a miracle for soccer terms that they have made it this far, and then that they were able to beat El Paso. So I think that they have the ability to knock Orange County off. They will possibly do so to get into the Eastern Conference Final. So if we look at the other side, San Antonio versus RGV, I really believe that Rio Grande Valley beating Phoenix was a fluke.
Yeah.
They took it to 3-3, if I'm not mistaken. The final of that game was 3-3 before they went to penalties.
Right.
And if it comes down to penalties, anybody can really win at that point. And I include, the Rowdies in that they could lose any game if it goes to penalties. That's what we're trying to avoid. Yeah. And that is how Rio Grande got through, and I think that they will probably not be able to keep this up against San Antonio, who are a better team. If we just want to look very quickly at the standings at the end of the season, San Antonio ended their 32-game season on 52 points. Rio Grande Valley finished on 47. That's actually not that different. It was 14 wins to 13 wins, and then a different amount of losses and ties, but have to, take everything into consideration. And I think that San Antonio just have a better team overall than Rio Grande Valley, who were previously the feeder team for Houston Dynamo and do have still a lot of former MLS youth players. I just don't see Rio Grande Valley being able to recreate the magic here. And now, like I said, with Oakland and Orange County, there could be something here. Orange County started with they played their 32-game season. They ended with 52 points. Oakland Roots, 32 games played, only 41 points. I believe that they are the lowest points total to still be remaining in the playoffs. And some quick look at this does suggest that is the case. So, yeah, Oakland Roots, again, 41 points. They actually had a negative goal differential. So they had more goals against than goals for this season. But you have to consider that in the last couple games of the season, they were going all upward. Everything was trending upward. So, it's possibly a case of this team coming together after having had such a tumultuous start to the season in terms of, finding a place to play, getting a proper field on that at that venue, getting all their players together. I believe a coach was fired. I am not entirely sure about that, but if I'm going to point Brett in the right direction, and I had met Brett before this game, like you had met Davey. So shout out to him, but I want to make sure that he's got the right idea here as far as I can guess it. If I'm going to say anything, I'm going to say it's going to be Oakland versus San Antonio in the Western Conference Final. And then I don't think Oakland would be able to hold on, and I'm going to put San Antonio to win it. If that is the case, I think that whoever wins the Eastern Conference will have the best shot at winning the championship overall, whether that's the Rowdies, Birmingham, Charlotte, or Louisville. Yeah. But that is what I'm going to put my money on now, my hypothetical money, because I'm too bad at predicting to put any actual money. So San Antonio is my bet against Oakland Roots, who will not be able to hold them off. And that is my long of the Western Coast Conference Final.
Yeah, see, we're rivaling some of the other bigger promotions who've talked about this. Put us on ESPN Plus, man.
Yeah,
yeah. I think San Antonio. It's their conference to win. It's the Western is wide open for San Antonio. It's pretty much theirs to win, but there's a little bit of a magic in this Oakland Roots run, like you said. So there's. Who knows? I mean, I think you're definitely on the right track talking about Oakland's ending performance, kind of rewriting the story of the beginning of this season. I really think you can't. I mean, even when we, as the Rowdies, played them, I don't think that you can really. You can't hold them against their previous performance because they're turning it on at the right time, and that's what you have to do in the playoffs. But. Speaking of the playoffs, we have moved on to the semi-final round. So in this supersized episode of RBLR Rowdies, James, let's get into Birmingham, buddy.
All right. Well, yeah, we can do that, and then we will do our hot take. And one more thing before we let everybody out here. Birmingham is the next team that we have to play, though, so we need to talk about them. With this game done, we now have the chance to play Charlotte or Louisville afterwards. Hopefully that means that we beat Birmingham, obviously, to get there. But let's go over why Birmingham are even here, because there is some controversy about that. Birmingham were supposed to play Pittsburgh this past weekend, but it turns out, much like the Rowdies of last season, Pittsburgh had an outbreak of COVID within their team. Now, I don't want to speak to, anything that might be wrong here. There are rumors that they had a Halloween party, and I'm certain that they were not the only team who would have done that, even if it is absolutely true, which I am certainly just spreading rumors here. This is something that I heard, not something that I've confirmed, and maybe that's bad journalism. But hey,
it was tweeted out. I saw the same thing. It was tweeted out by a journalist. They didn't name the source, but they are I have to pull up the tweet what it was, but it was a prominent. I did the research. It is a verified checkmark blue Twitter handle that for whatever that's worth. But it is a reporter from that area. So,
all right. Well, that is a little bit more than I had. So I'm glad that somebody looked into that. Thank you, Eureka. Yeah. But so they obviously could not play this game, and rather than wait a couple days to see if they could bring it together, they couldn't wait till next weekend because of the schedule of the playoffs. And Birmingham are just going to go through, and so they didn't actually have to play this past weekend. Regardless, we have them lined up. So where did Birmingham finish last? Over the course of the season, they were second in their division. They were behind perennial power Louisville City, and that was after leading for a couple portions of the season in their own division. So Louisville actually beat them out, I believe, on the last week of the season to take over the first spot in their own division. And, for whatever that's worth, it's something that we need to consider. Both these teams are going to be very good, whether it's Louisville, Birmingham, whoever we might end up facing if it moves farther than that. So they have several threats and some players that Rowdies fans may be familiar with. I want to go over a couple of those players really quickly. One player that they will not have, though, is Junior Flemings. If everybody remembers Junior Flemings, there was an incident with him playing with Phoenix last year, and he did not play for them after what was reported to be a homophobic slur was used on the field. It was something that, everybody came together afterwards and they vouched that he at least had learned from this, and Birmingham felt confident in signing him. So he's been a very good player for them. I will say that, he's somebody that they have relied on quite a bit, but they cannot rely on him for this game because he was actually good enough to get called up to the Jamaican national team. Advocating for Jordan Scarlett, but you know what? I am glad that he is not missing for this upcoming game. Junior Flemings will be, and we have our guy, so I'm really happy about that part. That being said, they will definitely have plenty of other players that we need to watch out for. One of those is J.J. Williams. J.J. Williams is a former Generation Adidas player drafted to MLS. Generation Adidas is for players who were good enough to go pro before they were supposed to graduate from college. So he was called up early, and then he didn't quite make the grade at MLS. But as I've said for a number of players, if you are good enough to play in MLS and be a good prospect, it is very likely that you will have a good time at USL in the USL Championship level. and I believe he has so far. He is a big, imposing forward. He's got a lot of strength. I'm not entirely sure that he is the fastest, but, he definitely does have some speed out there, and somebody who can put, Forrest Lasso, Aaron Guillen, and Jordan Scarlett all on notice. Somebody that they'll have to keep an eye on. Another player that I want to highlight is Nico Brett. Nico Brett is another Jamaican player. He is a forward for Birmingham, and he is, their usual goal-scoring threat, somebody that we will need to keep an eye on up top and make sure that he is marked at all times, make sure that he is closely marked so that he cannot have any space to try and swing and get a shot off. That is somebody that we do not want to allow to do that. Yeah. The one more player that I will highlight before I'll turn this over to you, I believe you had some players you wanted to highlight and some tactics you wanted to go over, Eureka. Yeah. That is Bruno Lapa. Bruno Lapa is a Brazilian who went to Wake Forest University. If he had an American passport, he was going to be, considered a lot more highly, I think, by the MLS scouts, because there is a number of foreign players that you cannot go above unless you have, whatever certain deal with other teams that you have traded for more foreign spots. But he was not considered, unfortunately, good enough to get over that hump of not having the American, or Canadian, I should say, passport. And, it's unfortunate for him, but I do believe he will be MLS bound one day. Right now, it is not that day, so he is still with Birmingham. And he is a central attacking midfielder, another one that we will have to keep an eye out on. He likes to pull the strings in the attack and try and set things up, specifically often for Nico Brett. But yeah, those are the players I wanted to highlight, and I will turn it over to Eureka now to finish that and go over their usual playing style.
Yeah, just a few more. I mean, Anderson Asiato, he made the USL Tactics, which is a wonderful Twitter handle if you haven't gone to there. And if he was actually just on the Unsubs pod talking a wonderful preview of last round. So he named his team of the season, and Asiato is definitely on that team. So it's definitely a guy we need to mark. He fights very hard in the middle defensively and can create opportunities for Nico Brett in the box. And I would also look towards the wings of Ryan James. He's quick. He's very good defensively. He has the ability to press up in the attack, and he likes to rush in the box to create havoc. So that's, I'll get into a little bit, but that's kind of how I think they're going to attack us. On the right wing, though, Jonathan Dean has to be one of the top fullbacks in the USL. He has a consistent top rating. If you're looking at like FootMob, when you're looking at the stats, he's definitely racks them up all around the field. He's great at passing. He's got a good first touch, and he's one of these guys that's very accurate with their long pass, which is kind of how I think they're going to attack us. So looking over some of the games that they've gone over, they're a defensive-minded team. I think that if they were to play Pittsburgh, that would have been a very dirty, grimy 1-2 goal game. Maybe it would have been 1-0, like just something. It's a dogfight, and basically in the last throws of the game, they score a goal or something, and it's like where one mistake causes it. I think that's what that game would have been like, because Birmingham has more of a kind of a counter-attacking offense. They like to do big, over-the-top passes to the forwards. The pressing forward, not so much. They do like to stay back so they're not caught flat-footed on a return. It'll be a little different with the Rowdies, who are a possession team. So, but most of their shots, I see that they're deep in the box. They like to get into the box, create that havoc, like I said, with Dean and James and Asiatu kind of distributing the ball. Other than Eli Cronali, who likes to fire it from deep, Nico Brett is very good offensively. He can score from anywhere, and it really matters if they can get him the ball. If you look at how this team is going to be defended by the Rowdies, the Rowdies are going to have the ball at least 50 to 60% of the time in this match, in my estimation. And when Birmingham gets it, can they create a deep, long ball to get up to Asiato and inevitably to Brett to get that in there? That's really how I see them. They're if you look at their form over the last month, They lost their last game heading into the playoffs, and it was against a very good team in Louisville City. They lost to them 1-0, but to be fair, this is a lot like I think this upcoming game is going to look like. Birmingham gave up shots all the time at the top of the box. I think they were just resigned to saying, like, we're gonna pack this in and we're gonna let them shoot from the top of the box. And I think this is going to be a feasting opportunity for Hilton with set pieces. I think this is going to be a feast for Leo Fernandez and Connor Antley with the crosses. If they're in the same form that they were this week, it's looking real nice. Before that, though, I mean, they beat the pants off of KC2 6-0. I mean, there really wasn't much to learn other than KC2 sucks. That's my journalistic opinion. Is that, I mean, 6-0, man. I mean, what do you learn? They tied OKC Energy, and to be fair, OKC Energy, they're not a playoff team. They didn't have a lot of points this year, but OKC dominated the pace. OKC owned the possession. They had amazing chance after amazing chance, and they just couldn't put one in the net, and that was a 0-0 draw. And then they beat Austin Bold about a month ago. But Austin Bold plays a 3-5-2, and again, they beat Austin Bold 3-1, but they gave up the wings defensively. They allowed crosses. They only really attacked through the middle of the field, and I think that is not a recipe for success against our 3-5-2 and the overall skill difference that we have. I mean, if they try to just run it up the middle, Jan Ekra and in the midfield, and if they even get to the back three in Loro, I mean, it's a whole different ball game with the Tampa Bay Rowdies. So, they've played a couple good teams in the last month, but to be fair, they lost to one of them. They gave up a draw to someone they shouldn't have, and I mean, maybe if you look back about in late September, they beat Charlotte Independence 2-1, but they gave up a corner goal again. I think Hilton's going to have a lot of potential here. So. That's my long-winded preview, but I really think that this is if the Rowdies that showed up against Tulsa show up against this team, it looks like we're gonna have a lot of opportunity.
That's good. I really hope so. That would obviously be great for the fans. And, maybe we could see a nice little scoreline there. And speaking of scorelines, we do need to do our predictions before we move on. So, Eureka, do you want to go first, or would you like me to go first?
Sir,
or
I went first.
Would you allow, I should say, rather than like?
No. Sir, I went first. I humbly bow and let you go first this time, sir.
All right. Well, I am going to say that this game is probably going to be a little closer than a 6-2 finish against Tulsa. And I am going to give a 2-0 win to the Rowdies in my prediction. So hopefully we get the win. And, it might be, like you said, something that we grind out. But I think that would at least allow us to get that. What about you?
I believe it will be a 2-1 victory. I think we're going to actually go up by 2, and then they will fight, and we'll get a kind of a 1 goal at the back end. I think we're gonna have a lot of chances, and I think they're gonna do their best, and we're gonna hit the woodwork or something. But inevitably 2 goals will go in, and that will be enough to beat the Birmingham Legion.
All right. Well, I like that. And I hope both of us are true then, at least in that sense. But we'll do our hot take, and we got a couple really quick one-liners before we let everybody go. So my hot take, this is something that I mentioned earlier. I'll be really quick with it here. The Rowdies still need to be more clinical, and specifically at times like in the first half. There were a lot of chances that came in. Some of them that we documented, some of them that we didn't even have time to go through while we took up so much time with other ones. The Rowdies need to make sure they get all those opportunities, because there are not going to be too many games where there are 4 goals all coming in stoppage time. I would prefer that we just get it taken care of and we send a team packing on their way so that, it gets to the second half and they don't really even have any energy to fight.
Yeah, my hot take, I know the back 3 in Loro are going to get the credit for this amazing defensive just performance this entire year, but the midfield of the Rowdies, it is what is going to decide if we are winning a championship or not. The midfield this game was amazing. Leo, Lawrence, Lewis, Connor. It doesn't matter. They were all in their own way fantastic. And so if that continues, then where do you attack this team? You know, you can't go up the middle. You can't go onto the wings because of Fernandez and Antley and Hilton. Like, they stop you no matter where you go. They recover even if you get by them. And then even if you do that, you have Scarlett, Lasso, and Guillen to get. And then even after that, you've got Evan Lauro. So this midfield, though, if they can continue how they played last week, they will be what decides if the Rowdies are going to win a championship. That's my hot take. That's my little spicy take there.
Well, it's something I generally tend to agree with. So we are all good there. And the last couple things I want to mention here, the Rowdies made it a point on Twitter before this game came up. Please help them pack Al Lang. And you know what? Everybody and their mom, including everybody and my mom, showed up. Yeah, it was awesome. And I think that, we got to help them do it again. Atmosphere was absolutely electric this past game, and I think that we can do it even more so for the Eastern Conference semifinal, and then hopefully the Eastern Conference final, and even farther than that. The post-game press conference, they made a note of saying how much they all appreciate the crowd. Leo Fernandez was the player, and Neil Collins, obviously, the coach who showed up. So, they both brought up the crowd, and they both brought up how much it had an impact on them over the course of this game. I think that we have to do that again. And remember, we are the best team left. Well, obviously we were the best team in the playoffs because of where we finished, but Phoenix and El Paso are both out of the playoffs. Right now, I think whoever wins the Eastern Conference will probably win this league. They are all better teams than what's left in the Western Conference, in my humble opinion. But if we are the team to do it, then we have a great chance to win the championship. So please go out there and help them do it. We can get it this year if we continue to show up and push the team forward. The last thing that I want to mention here is that the Rowdies are actually entering into the futsal. So we have something coming up here. There was a press release, an announcement, I believe this was last week, that the Rowdies will participate in the United Futsal Champions Cup Series. So that's interesting. The Rowdies will compete in the Eastern Conference Finals. This is set to be played December 18th to the 20th in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm not entirely sure why it's there as opposed to anywhere else, but fair enough. 2 teams will wear the Rowdies colors at this tournament. There will be a boys team of 2007 to 2008 birth year players, and there will be a girls team competing for the 2004 to 2006 birth year. And, the players will be selected by invitation to make up the representative teams for each side. And I think that, that's going to be really awesome that they're actually branching out into futsal. Futsal is very important for youth players to get to learn how to control the ball in tight situations and under high pressure, because that's what futsal is. It is a small court. And, you have to really develop your foot skills. It's very important, in my opinion, for youth players. And I wish that is something that I had done. I think that the Rowdies branching out into this is super cool. And if we get any more information on how this game can be either viewed, or if, there will be any way to, I don't know, if you want to travel with the team, maybe there will be parents at least that do. But yeah, that's just super awesome, in my opinion. So I'm happy to see it. And I'm happy that they are looking into this. That will cover it for our whole show today. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I know we went a little long, but there was just so much to cover because of this game and the game coming up. Yes, that's how playoffs work. So yeah, if you can, please let everybody know that RBLR Sports is out there, and we are looking for more people to join with us and help us grow too. You can do that by following us at RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can find me on Twitter as well if you would like to get at me. My handle is at RBLRJamesK. Please let me know if you have any questions. You can also use the hashtag AskRBLREureka. Can they get to you on Twitter?
Yes, so I am at Eureka, YURIKA, RBLR on Twitter.
So there you go. You can get to both of us there. And like I said, you can also use that hashtag AskRBLR. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. We are on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as YouTube and all other major podcast platforms. We love our listeners. We love the Rowdies, and we want to see them all show up this Saturday night against Birmingham. See you there.
Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.